Hey everyone, it's Rachel from Wild Backyard Soaps. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to make some pumpkin spice soap just in time for fall. It is the first day of fall today and my little sugar pumpkins are ready for me to turn into a puree to put in the soap. However, the other pumpkins are not ready yet. I'm hoping they will be before we get hit by a blizzard because that often happens in early October around here. So yeah, feeling the pressure. We got a few weeks left to see what we can get from the outdoors before we're stuck inside for a while. And I apologize, but the cat is taunting a chipmunk over there, so I hope you can still hear me okay. I've tried to get them to be quiet, but it's not happening. All right, let's go make some soap. After several years of trial and error and reading food blogs, I have discovered, I don't know if you can see that okay, definitely easier to cut open squash, no matter big or small, with a smaller knife. It's thinner, and so you don't have so much pressure from the squash trying to push back on it, so it's easier to slice through and pull back out. So that has been a really handy trick that has worked well for me. So I ain't gonna use this big knife cutting squash anymore. So I'm setting that aside. So here's a few of our little sugar pumpkins from our garden. I'm just gonna cut these open and de-seed them. Because they're so small, yeah, I didn't think we'd get much for seeds on this, but their flesh is amazing. We grew these last year too. So I'm just gonna pull all of this out of here. One thing I will say, pumpkin seeds, I learned this year, have some of the highest protein density of any nut, grain, seed, or legume. So I try to eat a lot more pumpkin seeds than I used to, and I try to save as many of them as I possibly can. And I buy a lot as well to put in granola because we've been really trying to eat more granola. That's a great way to get a lot of healthy grains and protein, but way more pumpkin seeds than we could ever grow. And so I actually buy from Azure Standard. If you've never heard of them before, they're essentially a bulk foods company with a lot of healthy and organic stuff as well. Lots of grains, but they have like tea and beans and oats, and they have really good vanilla and baking chips, and they have homemade pasta, and I also get sunflower seeds for our granola, and they have seriously so many different things, even hard red wheat, hard white wheat, spelt, einkorn, so a lot of those whole grains that you can, or what they would be called wheat berries, so you can actually grind them yourself and you get a lot more nutrition than the flour that you're going to find on the shelf at the store, because they have to remove that germ where a majority of the nutrition is in order to give it a longer shelf life. So Azure Standard has one of the best prices that I've seen for wheat berries, and they have a lot of really great products. So essentially what you do is pick a drop location near you when you go to checkout, and then the drop coordinator, whoever set up that location, will let you know when the monthly time and date is for pickup, and then you show up and meet the truck there when they bring your monthly order. And you don't have to order every month, but I try to make it a big enough order that it's worth the trip. So I get some things in bulk that way, but you don't even have to really buy in bulk. Like you can buy smaller quantities like this, or even smaller, depending on what you're getting. But I will share that link down below for the sunflower seeds especially, but it's my personal sharing link. So if you want to go and try Azure Standard out, if you place an order for $100 or more, it gives me a small credit for my next order. So that helps me out, and then it's totally worth trying for you, and see if that's something that you would like to do, because sometimes you find things on there that you can't even find locally, or just better quality products. And they are a company that I support. We've been really happy with them since we started getting stuff from them. I've done like bulk onions and broccoli and carrots, and my absolute favorite is these non-dairy white chocolate chips for sure. So yeah, I will put that link down below in case you're interested in trying them, and just make sure your order is at least $100, which is really easy to do when you're buying in bulk anyways, and with prices going up and such. So I'm only going to actually need a couple of tablespoons of this pumpkin puree. The rest of it I'm going to save to make a big pumpkin pie. And I'm a bit of a rebel when it comes to cooking and baking. I don't really cook or bake much of anything that is difficult to do or really time consuming, or like it takes longer to make it than how long it takes me to eat it. So instead of a traditional round pumpkin pie, I actually like to make it in a casserole dish. That's why I have this here to remind me to mention that. I've got a couple of sticks of avocado butter getting down to room temperature. I'm really lazy with crust too, but guess what? You can't even tell. So instead of going through all the trouble of like
pushing and cutting through all the little pieces of hard butter and trying to get them evenly distributed into the crust. And then, oh, you've got to roll it out and make it all perfectly round and flip it over. I seriously just put room temperature butter with salt and flour and sometimes a couple extra things and mix that up like into a big dough ball. And then I literally just smash it into the pan and there's my crust. And sometimes I'll pre-bake it just slightly and then poke it with a fork just to make sure it's cooked evenly. But yeah, I literally just put it in a casserole dish. And then for the pumpkin puree, because pumpkin pie, oh my goodness, if you've never tried it with fresh pumpkin like what I'm doing, it is 10 times better than anything from a can. So I just take all of the pumpkin puree and chuck it in the blender and then add in all of my other ingredients and blend it up so it's nice and smooth. And then you just literally pour it right over the crust and it's ready to bake. So I often have my pumpkin pie in a square shape. But guess what? It still tastes just as good and it's so much easier to make that way. So that encourages me to make it more often, especially with all these lovely pumpkins that we've been growing the past couple years. So if you've never done that before and you are a little hesitant about all the energy and effort that it takes to make a traditional pie, try it in a casserole dish and let me know what you think, because I think it's totally worth it. I actually found a vegan pumpkin pie recipe last year, and I made it like 3 times because I loved it so much, and I couldn't even tell that it was vegan. It seriously tasted just as good as any other pumpkin pie that I've had that's had milk and eggs and such in it. So if I can find that recipe again, because I really need to make some again soon, that's why I've got this sitting out. I need to track down that recipe, so I will share that with you for anyone that's interested in giving that a try. Because anytime that I can try to make some healthier choices and cut out extra dairy and sugar and such, I try to do that. And if you can't even tell, why not, right? So I'm actually using a grapefruit spoon. It tends to help with these tougher ones to get all the seeds out. So I'm going to go ahead and finish. I've just got a couple more that I'm going to do this time around. This should be enough for the soap and then to make one pie, I think. And what I'm going to do is put these into the crock pot. I'll go ahead and do some of those right now with some water and just turn it on high for a couple hours maybe, or until it gets soft. I probably don't even need that much water really, because you don't want it to get too waterlogged. And then when you get that puree afterwards, once it cools down, you want to scrape out the puree from the shell once it's cooled down enough, and then press it through like a strainer to just try to get as much of that extra water out as you can, because otherwise, if it's too watery, it just takes a lot longer to bake your pie or whatever it is that you're working with. For the soap, it doesn't matter so much. I'm just going to do a slight water discount to make up for that. But I'm not even adding the pumpkin puree to the entire soap. There's going to be part of it that I leave a plain color, and then I will add the puree to the colored portions. Pumpkin puree turned out so smooth and creamy, and I tasted it and it tastes amazing. I prefer small pumpkins to large pumpkins any old day. Those are way better for making pies, and you can even eat them plain or with some butter and salt. Pumpkin is just great, and the sugar in it is going to help add a little extra fun lather boost to this soap. I think I have everything ready now. I have some turmeric for the middle layer that I'm going to do here, and some of the pumpkin puree mixed in with this. And then a little bit of cocoa powder and pumpkin pie spice for the top layer. And I am going to do a bit of a swirl, and then the bottom layer is just going to be the plain oils with a little bit of kale and clay mixed in. I am going to do a bit of an angle pour this time. So I have this turned sideways, so I'm going to start with a lighter layer and then do the orange and then the brown, and then just do like a really light, quick hanger swirl, and then top it with some jasmine and calendula flowers. So that should make a really beautiful contrast. And this is an all-natural soap. I'm not using any mica powders or titanium dioxide or fragrance oils. The fragrance that I'm doing is all essential oils this time, and this is my own blend that I kind of just eyeballed and made up. So it's mostly grapefruit, and then the next amount is cinnamon leaf, not cinnamon bark because that can burn more. Cinnamon leaf still has some cinnamony smell, but it doesn't really burn and it's cheaper. And then there's a little bit of rosemary and cedarwood. That kind of gives it that earthy fall scent to it. I want this to smell like fall, not so much like a pumpkin pie because you can only do so much with cinnamon without it irritating the skin. And then I also put in a little bit of myrrh for kind of that earthy spice smell, and a little bit of tea tree as well. Although I'm not really liking the tea tree in it that much, so maybe I'd probably skip that next time. But yeah, those are the oils that I'm using this time. You could also use just a hint of cardamom or nutmeg if you would like to, or some cassia. I chose not to this time. I can't find my cassia oil right now. I think I used it all up. And then you're not really supposed to use hardly any for cardamom and nutmeg. So that's one of those things you would want to look up on an essential oil calculator to make sure that you're not using too much of any one oil based off of what is safe for irritation of skin, and then make sure that you're calculating it per pound of oils. So I think I have everything ready to go. Everything is just a little over 100 degrees right now, so I'm going to go ahead and combine and split this up. Just get it to a very light trace so it gives me a little more time to work with it. I am absolutely loving this. But oh man, I watched that video from making the soap and I discovered that I was totally blocking all the epic action of the soap cascade flowing down the side of the mold. Really sorry about that. What I was trying to do is a basic hanger swirl, but because the orange part had a lot of pumpkin puree, that's a higher water content, therefore takes longer to thicken up. And I was starting to lose my patience and I was like, it's okay, I'm just doing a couple swirls, it's probably gonna be all right. But it still spilled over the side like way more than I was expecting. And part of the problem is that my hanger is a little bit thicker than it should be. So I'm gonna show that to you right now because I actually rigged this up myself. So when we were building our T-frames, which are like the supports above our Mittlighter garden beds, those have wires across them, and then you tie some twine up so the plants will grow vertically instead of across the ground, so you can fit more in a smaller area. Well, we had some 9-gauge wire left over, and it's pretty tough stuff, so I just bent this into a hanger shape. However, it's pretty thick, and it's made of aluminum, which you're not supposed to put aluminum when you're making soap because it could create bad reactions. So I covered it with duct tape to protect that from happening. But now it's like super thick. So when I make my swirls, they tend to be thicker swirls. If I wanted something thinner, I'm gonna have to rig up something else for that. But this is what I've used for several of my hanger swirls. It works fine, but it kind of grabbed more soap and pulled it over the side of the mold than I want it to. So that's what happened with that. However, this still turned out really cool. I don't have any idea what the inside looks like. I'm a little bit nervous. Most of the time, soap is very forgiving and it tends to look amazing no matter what you do. I don't know how that happens, but these colors look really, really good. I don't know what ended up happening on the inside of this at all. So let's cut this open and find out. I can't wait any longer. This screams autumn pumpkin right here. Okay, I'll admit this is not exactly what I had in mind. I wanted it to swirl, like both of these layers to come down into here just a little bit and kind of give it one circular motion, but because it overflowed, apparently it went out instead of going down. So this is not what I had pictured in my head, but it still does look nice. Some of them do have this nice little swirl in them. That is it for this soapy adventure today, but have no fear. There are many other soap making videos on my channel and you should subscribe and check them out. Thanks again for watching and I will see you again soon.